Hey everybody, Ted Corcoran here, the President and CEO of the Greater Fort Walton Beach Chamber of Commerce. It's Thursday, April 2nd, one day before the stay-at-home plan kicks in. So before that, we wanted to make certain we had Seth Luttrell back there on the keyboard recording this. And we brought in our distinguished guest. The number one question that's asked right now is, what in the world is up with all these loans, the CARES Act, so on and so forth? I got one guy that I can bring in, and that's my good friend, Tony Hughes from Hughes Consulting Group. For over 40 years in the financial world. Nobody, Tony, can explain this better to our chamber members than you. Is that correct?
I thought I was the one asking all those questions of you. No,
I do want to.
We'll try.
Before we do that, I've known Tony a long time. Before we do that, I want to make sure that you all know that Tony and I are maintaining the 6-foot rule. This is our 6-foot pole, and we are 6 foot across. So, in all seriousness, from here though, Tony, obviously this is a monster. Can you get right to it on the CARES Act or wherever you want to begin to help our small business chamber members out there what they need to be doing?
Sure. So to begin with, probably the best thing to do is just kind of take a breath. You know,
Okay.
There's really nothing going to happen fast. I mean, I know that there are a lot of aspirational goals out there. We've heard that the Paycheck protection plan is going to start tomorrow. It's not going to happen fast. The economic injury disaster loans, the SBA, it's just not going to happen fast. So I think the first thing I really want to do is kind of lower everyone's expectations, because just the reality of it is that this is an unprecedented crisis. It's not, I mean, we've been through hurricanes, we've been through oil spills. These were still somewhat regionally defined emergencies. The oil spill affecting the northern Gulf Coast, you know, even if a hurricane hit South Florida and then hit us, it's still sort of limited to Florida. This is all 50 states and in fact all over the world. But as far as our government's ability to respond, this is a truly nationwide crisis, and seriously, probably not since World War II has the nation needed to mobilize. And even in World War II, we didn't have the financial issue that we have right now. So I really want to start off by just kind of lowering everyone's expectations and say, look, you might as well just kind of try to figure out what plan B and C is. These programs will help. There will be something coming from them, but you know, you really just, if you're planning on money being here on Monday, it's just not going to happen. So with that, Ted, we'll just kind of jump into it. The very first program that came online was really the Florida disaster loan, the small business bridge loan. And frankly, that's what I've been doing mostly for my clients right now. Have been applying for the Florida Small Business Emergency Bridge Loan Program. So these loans, these are 1 year, no interest loans from the state of Florida. It's administered through the Department of Economic Opportunity, and they've been slammed like everybody else has. So again, not going to happen fast, but this, I think, is probably one of the faster ways, just because it is just the state of Florida. It's not the entire world, not the entire United States trying to get these. They've only appropriated $50 million for this program. The maximum loan is $50,000. Do the math, that's 1,000 loans in the entire state of Florida. If they're all for 50, we could probably do 1,000 loans in Northwest Florida. So I don't know where it stands right now. I did talk to a friend of mine who is on the staff of one of our state legislatures this morning. She said they were supposed to be getting a briefing on it today. She promised to text me the information if there was anything new. But we have filed several of these for our for my clients. I've worked on several of these. It is online. The program's only changed 3 times in the last week, so that's actually pretty good. You know? It started off being like, okay, you can file it with your SBDC at UWF, and then it's like, no, we want you to go online, and then they put it into an online program that was really designed for something else, and it was very confusing, but I think they're pretty well figuring it out.
And what is their website now that it's on?
You can go to floridadisasterloan.org. You can also go through the Florida Department of Economic Opportunities website. I don't have that one off the top of my head, but it is a little complicated. There is underwriting involved. Essentially, what happens, the process is it goes from DEO back to your local SBDC. Small Business Development
Center.
Thank you. And they compile these packages and they submit these packages to a local loan committee that's made up of commercial lenders and commercial credit officers in the local area. They look at the applications, they look at your tax returns. You do have to establish what your economic injury was, and they vote up or down, yes or no. If they vote in favor, then the state of Florida contacts you and they arrange the paperwork, and you'll get your however much money you applied for based upon your economic injury. It is a bridge loan. It's a 0 interest rate. It's 1 year. The idea is that you will then file for federal disaster assistance in some way, shape, or form. And then when that money comes in, you will use a portion of those funds to pay this $50,000 or whatever the amount is. You'll pay that off before the end of the year. So I haven't actually seen any of these be funded yet because again, it's only a week old, 2 weeks old now. But the applications, it's not that hard. It's not that complex. You may need some help if you're not accustomed to making loan presentations. You may need some help, but it can certainly be done. There's a PowerPoint out there, and this was actually emailed to me, and I can share it with you, Ted, so you can get on the Chamber's website. It actually has some very detailed information about exactly how to file, how to fill the application out online, if you so choose.
There we go. So we'll have that information on the Fort Walton Beach Chamber website. Again, Hughes Consulting, Tony here sharing his knowledge. You can contact him. His name is also on the website, hughesconsulting.org. But in this case, it's generalities. Now, when you say that of the 3 that we have, that would be the one that maybe they should jump on the first?
My recommendation is shotgun approach.
Okay.
Again, take your time and do it right. Fill your applications out completely and fully, but there's nothing wrong, nothing prohibits you from really going after all 3 at the same time with the qualification of this. The bridge loans, no problem at all. There are some restrictions in these 2 federal programs about you can't really get loan proceeds to cover the same economic injury. So, and I kind of jump into that a little bit more detail when we start talking about the PPP and the EIDL loan, but both of them say there's no problem at all getting state bridge money in advance. Right, but they will be coming back to see, they don't want you to keep the bridge loan and this loan without paying one of them off.
There we go. So the state of Florida has 1 loan, bridge loan, now the federal ones.
Okay, so the one that I think is going to be the biggest impact to most people is going to be the Paycheck Protection Program, and this is the one that's through this is essentially it's like a streamlined SBA 7A loan, for lack of as far as giving the closest analogy to it. You do have to go through a bank. You have to go through an SBA approved lender. Now, the banks are not ready for this. This information literally, in fact, the first guidance from the SBA went to the banks this past Tuesday. So they've had this information for like a grand total of 3 days now.
Right.
And oh yeah, their customers have got their own share problems already that their staff is working on. And as far as I know, no banks have any open lobby hours right now. So this is, again, don't get in a big, huge hurry, but you do need to start working on it. My recommendation is to call the banks. Not all banks are participating in the program. Not all banks are SBA 7A lenders. So now the banks, and there is an application process the banks have to go through to get approved. Now, I do think that approval process is going to be fairly quick, but if you call your bank tomorrow and they say, we're not taking these applications, don't get totally ticked off with them because again, they didn't see it coming either. The nuts and bolts of the Paycheck Protection Program it's really designed for businesses that have a larger number of employees, at least 1, 2, 3, 10, 50, up to 500. If you go over 500, you don't qualify for the program. The formula that they're using is to take your average monthly payroll, say for 2019, whatever you average in payroll for that month, multiply by 2.5, and that's how much of a loan you can qualify for. The loan is at a 1/2 of 1% interest rate. It's a 2-year loan. There's no payments required on it. It is accruing, it does accrue interest, but it is fully guaranteed by the United States federal government. There is little to no underwriting on this loan. It's really a function of what is your payroll. The nice thing is that if you maintain the same number of full-time equivalent employees, like from today going forward, if like you bring your staff back, you hire them back, and you start paying them the same wage relative to what it was in a typical month last year, then that money will be forgiven. So this is the really important thing about the Paycheck Protection Program, is it does include, hypothetically, 100% forgivable money. There's a formula that's involved. You can go to the SBA's website to get some information about this. Again, you can contact your local bank to see if they're offering it. I've kind of anecdotally called several banks, and there are some that are, some that aren't, some that are not allowed to yet. So you'll just have to call your bank. I will say that if your bank chooses not to participate in this program, that's probably bad. Several banks I have talked to are going to give some preference to their existing customers. If you're an existing customer of Bank X and you need a PPP loan, they're likely going to put you to the top of the list versus, somebody who, I banked at Bank Y. Bank Y is not offering this, and I have no choice but to go to Bank X. I'm probably the end of the line. I will say that this is one program that it would be good, and this is not necessarily a pitch for me, but this is a pitch for any attorney, accountant, or consultant. You as a small business can retain someone to help you with your application, and there's a defined fee that consultant, attorney, accountant can charge, and it has to be paid by the bank. And the bank pays it out of the fee that the SBA is paying the bank. And I'll just tell you that if it's like up to a $350,000 loan, for instance, the SBA is going to pay your bank 5% of your loan amount to process this payment. If you utilize a consultant, an attorney, an accountant to help you prepare your paperwork, that consultant, if you will, can charge 1% of the loan amount as their fee, but that fee goes to the bank and comes out of the bank's 5%. So it's the SBA and the federal government's position that the borrower does not pay any fees to the bank whatsoever for going into this program. So this is probably the biggest pop, if you will, for a business as far as getting loan forgiveness, because and I guess I also forgot to mention that you pay 8 weeks of salaries to your staff and up to 25% for overhead expenses like mortgage payments, lease payments on your facility, utility bills. If you use all that money for that 8-week period for salaries and for utilities, 100% of that loan is forgiven and you don't have to pay any of it back. So that's really a big deal. That's one reason why this is going to be a very, very popular program, because it's going to be really large.
Yeah, no doubt, and that's under the CARES Act. Is that
that's
the
correct.
basic
This is
crux of it?
all part of the CARES Act.
The CARES Act is that.
That's right. Well, the CARES Act has got a lot in it. This is one piece of it.
One piece of it, but
this was a big piece. This was the biggest piece for small business as far as trying to help them out.
So in that case, folks, contact your bank, your attorney, and your accountant.
Yeah.
And if you can't get through to get with one of them, and one of them should be able to help point you in the direction.
Yeah, you can also go to sba.gov. They have all the government websites have this little red banner across the top, for COVID-19 assistance. Even the Treasury homepage has the little strip here on top. You can click it, and all this information basically sits behind, in these websites.
There we go.
But again, it feels overwhelming because we are overwhelmed. Okay, now let's just face it, we are overwhelmed with everything going on right now, and this is just adding to it. But if you take small bites of the elephant here and just look at the individual programs, well, and let me give you an example. The here's the application form for the Paycheck Protection Program. This is it. This is the application.
Just one side?
And it's one side, and then
Oh, and then-
a bunch of disclaimer stuff on the back of it. The section right here, and you probably can't really tell, but I've kind of highlighted in yellow, this is where your loan amount is determined. And it's basically your average monthly payroll times 2.5 times is your loan amount, and then the number of jobs. Then, after the 8 weeks is up, then you will go back, you'll take your documentation back to the bank that granted you this loan, and you'll say, hey, Mr. Banker, here's what I spent my money on, and this is all the legitimate, reasons and the legitimate amounts. Please write my loan down to zero, and they will say, absolutely, got you covered. They have 60 days to evaluate, your actual expenses after that 8-week period is over. And if you've done everything correctly, your loan gets wiped out.
There you go. And where they get that application again?
This is available online at SBA.gov under the Paycheck Protection Program.
And I'd be remiss
And
if, when
this is-
somebody
and
says
this is
taking
for-
a bite of the elephant, I'd be remiss of indicating how that's the mascot of the University of Alabama.
Roll Tide Run.
That's
And really, seriously, I want to introduce just a little bit of levity. It really will be a travesty if we lose college football season. we got to get this virus stopped. So that's really a big deal.
That's the second
But
one
this-
with PPP.
And so this is not directly through the SBA, this is through your banks. All right, last but not least is the economic injury disaster loan through the SBA. Now this is another one that probably sounds hard, but really isn't. And again, I brought you an application just so you can see that it's not that bad. It's got some scary blanks in it and a lot of small type, but it's really not terrible.
For government work.
For government work. Now, again, not necessarily trying to pitch me or anybody else, but this is one that you probably are gonna want some help with. And the reason is because, again, this is the entire nation asking. This is a direct through the SBA loan. This does not involve a bank, doesn't involve anybody else. You file for this online, and it's going right into the SBA's agency. Again, the SBA was not prepared for every small business in the nation to come ask for this. So it's going to be important that your application be correct, it be complete, and it be accurate. Because as they're processing, and there is underwriting involved here, they're going to make a credit decision about you. If anything's missing, now they will tell you, hey Ted, you forgot to cross a T and dot an I, but they're going to take your application and they're going to put it right back there at the back of the line and work on the next one that's complete until you fix whatever's wrong with it. So this would be an example of where you may want to look at getting some help. Now, there's no reimbursement for help with the EIDL loan like there is the PPP.
Another example of either a consultant like yourself or an accountant.
Accountant, attorney, whoever's maybe doing your taxes, these are all good people that you could talk to. If they've got some familiarity with the Small Business Administration and how it operates and how to fill out loan applications and how to make loan presentations, really anyone like that can help.
Good.
All right, so just a few things. Now, again, this is directly online with the SBA. It can be up to 30-year financing. It can be up to $2 million.
Wow.
You do have to establish your economic losses, or your economic injury, technically. So that can also be a little on the dicey side. One thing I will tell you that you really always want to focus on gross profit. That's really where your losses take place, your injury takes place in gross profit. For instance, if let's say the chamber had some event planned as a fundraiser and you were going to raise $50,000 from this event, but it was going to cost you $20,000 to buy the food and rent the facility and whatnot. Well, your gross profit is $30,000. Well, if you had to cancel the event because of the virus, your economic injury in this case would be the $30,000. It's not necessarily what it would have cost you to put the event on, it's what you would have lost by not having the event. So that's just kind of an example of why sometimes you might want to think about hiring an expert. I've had 3 clients apply for this so far. Again, this is, we talk about aspirational goals. The aspirational goal here is that everyone who applies for an EIDL loan will get at least a $10,000 grant to help cover some of their losses. It's a fairly short, probably 20-minute interview online to start the process. This is sort of a screening, I'm gonna call it a screening process, but you have to make some representations about your business and if you've been ever, convicted of a felony and if you're behind on your child support and some, some things like that. But then, basically just says, would you like to be considered for the $10,000 grant? Yes, of course. And technically it's an advance against these loan proceeds. Then if you kind of meet that initial screening, my understanding is they will come back and ask you for, your tax returns, your financial statements, your pro formas, the things that you would probably need to get someone to help you with. But even if you're not approved, this $10,000 advance is supposed to come to your bank account in three business days.
Oh.
Now, I had they opened this up for this advance grant, if you will. On Tuesday, I had 2 clients that applied for it. They've not got their money yet. I read an article just this morning from an SBA administrator who basically said, yeah, we're working on that. But he couldn't even say, I think in his district, they'd already had 11,000 applications and he could not say whether anybody had received the $10,000 grant yet. Essentially, the SBA does this initial screening and then they turn it over to the Treasury and they tell Treasury, yes, send this money to XYZ company, and then it's up to Treasury to electronically transfer it. The interest rate is 3.75%, which is actually, I think, kind of high for the type of what they're doing. Nonprofits do get a 2.75% rate. You can use it to pay your debts, for your payroll, your accounts payable. There are limitations on who's eligible, who's not eligible. It's all built into the program as you start answering these questions. But for the people that maybe have losses more than what just the payroll, the payroll loss was, or maybe it's like, hey, yeah, it's great to put people back to work, but that's not really what I need in my business. That's not really the economic loss I've suffered. Maybe my loss was much greater than 2.5 times my monthly payroll. Then I think the EIDL program is definitely the one that you'd want to go with that.
There we go. Can people apply for all 3?
Yes. I mean, again, the bridge loan, going back to the Florida bridge loan, absolutely no problem at all applying for it. It's a little dicey balancing between the PPP and the EIDL, because you've got to make sure you don't apply for debt forgiveness for the same loss. So that's really where you have to be kind of careful. But yes, you can have a PPP loan and an EIDL loan as long as the losses were different and you're not double counting that same event. For instance, if I had a $50,000 economic loss, I can't go get $50,000 in forgiveness from the PPP and take the full $10,000 grant on the EIDL. But now, if I pass up the grant on the EIDL, I can still get fully compensated. As I understand it, you can get fully compensated on the PPP for the 50, and then come in and apply for the EIDL as well.
There we go.
But you just have to make sure you're not double counting the same loss.
3 different loans, folks, that Tony's talked about. Seth Luttrell, who's behind that camera, is going to make sure that all 3 links of that are on our website. You can click on that immediately after the conclusion of this. Tony, wrap things up.
Again, I just want to tell you, everybody's in it together. It's not going to help if you get upset with your banker or you get upset with the SBA. We're going to have to try to be patient. I know it's hard to say when people's lives and the businesses are on the line, but just don't count on this being there tomorrow as the end all be all for whatever the situation you're in. Try to find those other solutions. If you've got bank debt or loans with your house, your business, or your vehicles, you need to be talking to your lenders about what's going on. I have, if I can just add, I have sat in on 2 conference calls with senior regulatory leadership, both with the Federal Reserve in Atlanta, the FDIC in Atlanta, and the Florida Office of Financial Regulation, just to hear what the regulators are telling the bankers about what to do. Frankly, the regulators are, they're kind of bamboozled, and I will tell you one quick funny story. Don't feel bad about being confused. I did hear one of the regional directors for a bank regulator in Atlanta confuse the PPP and the EIDL program on a conference call with about 200 Florida bank CEOs. So if those guys are getting it confused, don't feel bad about getting it confused yourself. But I can tell you that the regulators are expecting the banks to work with their people, with their customers. I think all the banks are. I did see one of my clients sent me a letter that his bank sent him and asked for about 3 pages worth of documentation about why he was having a problem with the COVID virus. And this is just, I mean, you're gonna have situations like that, where some credit officer is trying to frankly cover their rear end with regulators and have documentation. So again, just be patient. We will get through it. We've gotten through hurricanes, we've gotten through oil spills. This is kind of the same, but kind of different just because it is nationwide, and we just got to take that into account. If you're trying to go and make an application on the EIDL loan for the SBA and their website crashes, that's why. It's because you and a million other people are trying at the same time to get the same program, and you'll just have to be patient until it has a chance to work its way through. I do think, and again, with the PPP program, bankers are going to be overwhelmed because they're already overwhelmed with their own work without this being on top of it. And I just believe that if you walk into their office or email it, since their office is not actually open, and your package is as complete as it can be and as accurate as it can be, that will expedite the processing, because they frankly don't have time to hold your hand and walk you through an application, because literally everybody's in it at the same time. So patience, take a breath, small bites of the elephant will make it through.
Tony Hughes, taking small bites of the elephant from Hughes Consulting Group, longtime friend of the Chambers of Commerce. We appreciate that, folks. We're going to check our website, fwbchamber.com or .org, for the listings of all those. And if you don't have an attorney, an accountant, or a bank, look at the business directory of the Fort Walton Beach Chamber of Commerce. We will keep you posted as things continue on this. And thanks for being a member of the Chamber, and just good luck with everything.